Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name's Victoria Munro, and I'm the Executive Director of the Alice Austen House. We are a historic house located in Staten Island, as I'm sure so many of you know. But for those of you that are new to us tonight, we're a house that the bones of it were originally built in 1690, so we're one of the oldest houses in New York City. But this house was purchased by Alice Austen's grandfather in 1844 and became the permanent residence for the Austens. And it is such a beloved home, called affectionately Clear Comfort. And we just are very driven by Alice's story and inspired by Alice. And so Alice was a woman that was born in 1866 and lived until 1952. And she created over 8,000 images in her lifetime. And the premise for the Austen House is to educate and inspire through Alice's work. Now, historically, we haven't always acknowledged Alice's truthful story, and Alice was a lesbian and lived 30 years of a 55-year relationship with Gertrude Tate at the home. The house is a site of LGBTQ history, nationally designated now, and we center the loving narrative of Alice Austen and Gertrude Tate. This is the second installment of a series of talks with Lesbian Avengers, we'll discuss that a little bit more later. And I'm sure you have all heard of them that have signed on tonight and read our press and other things. But the Lesbian Avengers are really like as inspiring as Alice Austen to us. What they have done and the work that they have done in the activist community and to make the lives of women and lesbians visible has been incredible. So this is just the first installment in what I hope and the rest of the Alice Austen House staff hope to be a much longer series of documenting and discussing all of their contributions that they have made to make our lives better and have bigger conversations in the world. So tonight, I am joined by Saskia Scheffer, who I met for the first time this year. Saskia is an incredible photographer. Saskia is an immigrant like myself. She was born in Holland and moved to America to pursue a larger photographic career. I'm not going to spend too much time talking. I want to be able to spend my time asking Saskia questions and have her talk more about it. But I do want to say that Saskia was a member of the Lesbian Avengers and documented many of their actions, and then has become an incredibly pivotal member to the Lesbian Her Story Archives that is celebrating its 50th year this year. Tonight's lecture will include more visuals than last week's because we have a wonderful trove of photographs to choose from that Saskia created. So I welcome you tonight, Saskia. If
Thank
you would
you.
just love to say hello to everyone.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. I'm happy to see all your faces, and I hope you have a good time at this conversation tonight.
So what I'm going to do is start off with obviously grounding ourselves at the Alice Austen House, seeing as this is our discussion tonight where we're starting from with your incredible photographs, Saskia, a small sampling of the action that took place at the Alice Austen House in 1994. And I just want to let everyone know that may have missed it. Saskia's photographs were actually on display as a part of a partnership with Photoville in the Alice Austen Park grounds this summer for around about 4 months. So I'm going to open the first slide. So Saskia, can you tell me just a tiny bit about this particular photograph, which both you and I have kind of decided on that this is, you said to me, this is my favorite. And I said, it's mine too. That's why I started the slideshow with it.
This is one of my favorite photographs of this action. I see Amy and Catherine here, and they're both blowing up one of the inner tubes that the Avengers made. And I have to clarify, I am not officially a lesbian Avenger, but I am at almost all of their actions, and I photograph everything. But I can't quite yet take that complete honor of being a lesbian Avenger. So anyway. That said, one of the things that you need when you do some direct action, you need props. And if it is a nautical event, then, life preservers or dike preservers seem to be very appropriate. I don't know who had the idea. I think they're absolutely wonderful. We caught a lot of attention taking those things on the subway and on the ferry. And as a matter of fact, at the archives, we still have one of them. It no longer inflates. It lies flat. But maybe, anybody with some glue and tire fixing material could help with that, and we can have a functional dike preserver again. Anyway, this is preparing for the auction. I think this is on 14th Street or near 14th Street. And yeah.
I love that you were preparing for the action on the street, Saskia, that everyone was gathering together before making the journey to Staten Island. I wonder, could you talk to us just a tiny bit as a lead-in to this being one of the favorite photographs about what brought you to photography?
What brought me to photography? I I went to visit friends in America, my first time to America, and I borrowed a camera, and I really loved what that did to me. I really liked the images that I took. I enjoyed seeing memories. And then, in those days, photography was analog. There's no such a thing as 100 photos in 10 minutes. Every photo is 36 on a roll, maybe 24. You need two cameras if you walk around. You need one for black and white and one for color if you want to photograph both ways. And anyway, I borrowed a camera, I came to America, I took pictures, and I fell in love both with New York and photography. And that is kind of how that started. Yeah, both were a major surprise.
What year was that, Saskia?
That must have been 78, 1978, 79, I think. And then I went back to Holland. I knew on the first day in America that I was going to move here. That was quite clear to me. It did take me a year to organize it all, to get some money together. I arrived with the incredible sum of $800. It did not last long. And but yeah, I arrived in a very welcoming community. I knew people here, and that has been so incredibly wonderful and such a privilege. I had housing. I had housing. I mean, how important that is. Many people don't have that immediately. And And I knew friends, I had friends in the lesbian community. I had met them in Amsterdam. And so I kind of was really, really lucky with my arrival in New York. A lot of things presented themselves to me.
I think it's an incredible city in that respect. My story is a little bit similar. When I decided to move back, I came here when I was 21 and then moved back with $500 and managed to find a waitressing job the next day. But to have community is so important. Um, and so when you move back, I'm going to move to the next slide so everyone can see you arriving at the Alice Austen House with these incredible Dyke Preservers. When you moved to America, did you study fine arts?
Oh no, that took me 15 years to get to that point. In the meantime, had started to teach myself how to print black and white work in a dark room. And I was lucky enough that when I had been here for a while, maybe a little over a year or so, I landed a job in a color photographic lab, and that was what really was very influential to me. I could print my own material for very, very little money, and you know, color photography is expensive. Um, and I had a really big influence in the way of one of my teachers at that point. I met this woman, Susan Kleckner, lesbian and photographer, and incredibly inspiring. That woman could get you to put your work out, even if you didn't feel like doing it. There was a way about her that you just wanted to, you know, do your work and learn. And so that was, and she let me take her classes in exchange for working for her. I had no money. I mean, for years I had very little money. You know, a couple dollars here and there, that was it. No luxury. And but people gave me things. I had two women photographers who took me in their class and let me follow the class. One was at NYU and the other one was Susan Kleckner. And then, you know, you learn, of course, I'm in a community with other photographers, and you get to know people and you get to see work, and you kind of learn a lot. I didn't do an official education until I think I was 40, and I went back to school to get my undergraduate degree, because without a piece of paper, it was really hard to get a job and to pay your bills. And to me, I needed that. So I went to school and I did my undergraduates in fine art, and that was that.
And can I ask you what kind of subjects were you photographing before art school to build your portfolio? And what was, I understand that you had the kindness of these teachers taking you into their class. Did it bring you to vernacular photography, street photography?
Um, the work that I did at Empire State College, the work that I did for my degree, was a very general approach. I mean, it was not just photography, it was psychology, it was language, it was writing, it was history, all of that. But the work that did with Susan Kleckner, um, it taught me to look at things that go beyond, you know, the smiling picture. I do very little smiling pictures. Mostly I do not. I like to photograph things that surprise me, that, you know, you walk around and suddenly you see something, you go like, what is that? And sometimes there are things that we see all the time everywhere and we just don't notice them. And um, and I like to photograph activism. I like to photograph people bringing their enthusiasm for change. And that to me has been really, really big and really important. To be at an action and to see people on, on the street yelling their conviction, screaming their conviction, showing their conviction, and doing it where everybody can see them. That's pretty impressive.
And incredibly evident in your photographs. In this image, you're rehearsing the songs that I talked to Maxine about last week. The Avengers have their song sheets to take to the action. Um, you have an incredible archive yourself, and now are, well, not so recently, so involved with the Lesbian Her Story archives. I wanted to ask you, before we talk about the archives so much, your feelings about the intersection of photography and archiving and its importance there.
The intersection between archiving and photography. Well, it's a big job, and somebody's got to do it. Right, Maddie? Um, it is not an easy job. I mean, when you think about photography, a photograph, if you want to get really academic about it, a photograph is often seen as proof, as evidence, because it is a photograph and therefore it must be true. I think that that is not exactly true, but a photograph is open to interpretation. You look at it, and if you don't know what is on it, you have to read the image and figure out what it is. And the work that I've been doing at the archives has taught me an incredible amount of information about the lesbian communities. I knew very little when I arrived here. And I've been working with these photos, and I see, you see the names of people that have worked in the lesbian world, in lesbian activism, in all kinds of venues, and then you get to see their photographs, and you kind of make those connections, and you get to organize them and make them available for people. Archiving, if you cannot find something, then that sounds really weird. If you don't find something, then it isn't really there, then you can't use it. To find evidence of lives lived before you or even now is incredibly powerful. To see people um, in an identity that you can relate to, that maybe you didn't know anybody else had. To see people work on the lesbian bookstores, lesbian land, everything is it is a revelation. It's a revelation to people that come in and that look at the materials at the archives. And it's not just about the photographs, but the photographs is kind of my area now. Um, I kind of lost my train of thought.
No, how long have you been working with the Lesbian Her Story archives?
The first time I went there was 1989. It's been a while. And in those days, I think I didn't immediately have a fixed task. There was stuff that we all did. I remember sitting around the table and stuff envelopes, or put periodicals in alphabetical order, or prepare a march, or do any of those things. But eventually, I worked my way into the photography collection, and I'm still working with that. Um,
And what is your I always like to sort of actually ask this question. Right now, what is your greatest need in your department
Space.
space?
It is the greatest need in all of our departments, I think. We have an incredible group of people working all the time. It is amazing when you walk in and you see how many interns there are, how many volunteers come on a regular basis, how many projects get done on the spot. And but it's hard to find the space. Um, so that is important, and I'm kind of hoping that we will find it in ourselves to start looking for more space, a bigger building or an additional building, whatever solution we can think of, but we need it. Yeah.
I completely sympathize. We are in the exact same situation at the Alice Austen House, trying to work out of the historic home, not with the volume of archives that you all work with, but just finding space for the interns and volunteers that want to work with us. And it's a huge undertaking also to try to make the work that they're doing at that time meaningful as well. That also takes a lot of effort on the part of those that steward steward the work, or shepherd the work. Um, you know, Starting back in 1989, that work in the archives and then the more focused work in the photographic archive, do you feel like that's actually influenced your own practice?
Ah,
Just that
um,
act of looking.
um, well, my own photographs are more or less in the same state of organization. Some yes, some no. That is, I'm not sure. Uh, it has certainly opened my mind to seeing other kinds of photography, which I had never heard of before. I had never heard of T. Corinne, and I'm not saying that I am doing work like T. Corinne or anything like that, but uh, to see that teaches you. Anytime you see other people's work, it helps you to look at images and interpret images. So yes, that would definitely have affected my work. And not only my work as a photographer, but my work as a dike preserver. My work as a person who I really, really believe that the work that I do is community work, and it's not like working on a straight job or in another archive. It is working in a place where you are really part of the collection. You yourself are part of the collection. And when I came to that realization, that was big to me. That was really, really important to realize that I myself was part of history. I'd never felt that way. I'd never thought about it that way. And
When
yeah,
did you start to feel that way? Like that shift and like that realization that I am part of this thing, this community that's doing this really important work. And it's a I mean, I think personally, I think it's a part of your whole practice. It's very
yeah.
holistic.
Well, I've always felt part of the community. I was part of the lesbian community as a young dyke in Amsterdam. I was part of the community in New York when I first arrived. I was kind of always more of an observer than well, that might explain my role as a photographer, an observer, somebody who looks at what's happening and photographs it. I think it took me quite a while to realize that I was part of history, but I've always felt part of the community. It may sound like a contradiction, but
No,
that's how I feel it.
not at all. And I think I understand more from working with you this year and um working on selecting some images for exhibition. And I'm sure anyone that knows you on this call that you are one of the most humble people that I have ever met, and always looking to take a back seat. So I know it's kind of a big deal to sit here and talk with me tonight, but I hope it's, um, you know, it's just wonderful to see your photos here and share them with everyone.
Thank you.
Um, and I think if Alice could have had a little bit more flexibility with her photographic equipment, she would have certainly liked to have documented a little bit more movement and action. Um, and she tried to create that, even though many of the photographs are posed. She sort of tried to recreate that and a feel of the moment because she was not a studio photographer. And a practice like yours really embodies that feel, I think, of it's the street photography. And she called a lot of her photographs street types. And it's just so interesting to bring contemporary photographers into the space, and it increases our dialogue in the way we can think about her. I love this photograph of the Avengers holding these enlarged images of Austen's on the front lawn. It's so incredibly joyful. And also, um, we see this one photograph of Alice and Gertrude. It's held the other way around, but for me, it's always so important to include imagery of Alice and Gertrude as they were older, because so often they get stuck in time as this young woman. The former representation, sort of at the way Alice was represented at the house, she was sort of stuck in time at age 22, and we all get older and keep on expanding and doing. And I just think that it's so important to have that representation of the longer life that's lived and the longer relationship that was had. Now we're going to shift slightly into another action. Where was this photograph taken, Saskia?
1995, and I only know that because I printed it on the photo and I can still read it. So that is in front of the New York Public Library, where every year, March 17, was it 17?
St.
The
Patrick's Day.
Irish Lesbian and Gay Organization would protest the fact that they could not march under their own banner at the Irish Gay and Lesbian at the St. Patrick's Day parade. Okay, let me get that right. The St. Patrick's Day parade, no access for Irish gay and lesbians under their own banner. I thought of it, I thought of it always as the season's opener. It would be one of the first big events in the year, and then all kinds of other stuff would follow. It was always cold, and every year had its own particular mood. That this must be the happy year, that everybody was smiling and happy and just thrilled to be arrested, which has never been my thing. And then there were years that everybody was angry and furious and not in the mood at all to get arrested, but they did it anyway. They were there every year, amazing. And for me as a photographer, I'm there and I try to kind of catch what it is like. And see, this is the happy year. There's Maxine looking very happy. And so you wanna photograph what is happening, but you don't want to be in the way. And yeah.
Just want to share, that Staten Island, obviously, up until this year, did not include us in their parade. And last year, wonderful people organized a secondary inclusive parade. And this year they have finally agreed to allow LGBTQ people to march in the St. Patrick's Day parade in Staten Island. So it just resonates for how long this has been going on. Um, and, you know, these photos are just so terrific. They're amazing what you were able to capture. And there is this real sense of energy to them.
Yeah, thank you.
And Saskia, can I ask you, are these photographs also held at the Her Story Archives?
They are in a folder ready to go there. I have started to put my work, my own work in the archives, and it's both basically my own photography of people active in the community. So I have already brought over the work, the photographs of the Wow Cafe and Split Bridges and things like that, which is one of my first communities in New York. And this will also be going into the archives. But you know, funny thing when you're working with a really big collection, your own work comes last. It's simply it's, you know, with me, that's the case.
Oh, uh, yeah, I hear you. I don't think my website hasn't been updated since I took on this job. It's
Yeah.
8 years of just silence. But you know, because you feel so passionate about what you're doing, and trying to get it right. Um, could you just tell the audience what Wow Cafe is? Just briefly, you know, not everyone knows, and we've got younger people in the room and perhaps people that haven't lived in New York that long. I'm not sure, but
So in 1981, a small group of New York women started the Wow Cafe, Women One World Cafe. And funny thing, these women, Peggy Shaw, Lois Weaver, Pamela Cami, and Jody Mark, they had two couples. The couples did not know each other, but they met in Amsterdam. They met in Amsterdam at a women's festival where I had a job. I still lived in Amsterdam at that time. And they all took part in this huge women's festival, and it inspired them to do something very similar in New York when they came back. So in 1981, they did create the Women's One World Festival. It was absolutely wonderful. It was all lesbians, and I mean, everybody did everything. People were audience, performers, tech workers, money tech, everything. It was an incredible group of people. And and so two of the women, Peggy Shaw and Lois Weaver, together with Deb Margolin, created Split Bridges, a performance group that is still around, but they are now, I don't think Deb is still part of that group. And they do absolutely incredibly wonderful performance work. I always think of them as the quintessential butch femme um, actors here, and and this is the community that I arrived in. This is the community that I knew from Amsterdam. Lucky me, lucky
well,
me.
I would have to, you know, shout out the Dutch people. I have had such incredible experiences as a very young artist in Amsterdam, um, with people that just organized out of nothing, you know, and had squats and these other things that they utilized to create incredible programs and events. Um,
That's what I remember from New York, that people seemed capable of creating anything out of nothing. It was just amazing. The festival in Amsterdam was, you know, was created by a group of people who did this all the time. That was their job. They did a great job, but it was not without resources. And in New York, it was, oh my God, you would start off, you would think of something that you could do for the festival, and then you would go to Soho at night and pick up building materials that were always left out because there was a lot of small manufacturing there, and that's where you got your materials. The most amazing things out of nothing. Really, really, this is one of the things that I loved about New York.
I think it's still there,
It
and
is,
it's about an attitude, and I say showing in a gallery in New York is not the be all and end all. If you don't have a gallery space, make a zine. If you can, photocopy something, do it. We still use those technologies, and they're absolutely wonderful. Um, and we certainly try to inspire our young students today, to utilize that, to have their voices heard, or to show their work, in non-traditional ways. Could you do you remember now this event? This is a different event. It's a very
Valentine's
colorful
Day.
event.
Valentine's Day, I think 1994, and again, the Lesbian Avengers bring visibility to a huge problem, to lack of visibility. Here we are in the backyard of the New York Public Library, Bryant Park in the making. There's Lisa Guido. I see her. Do I know other people? I don't remember. Um, Anyway, in Bryant Park that year, uh, a new statue arrived, and Gertrude Stein, but no girlfriend. Why didn't she have a girlfriend? She lived with her partner. She lived with Alice Stokes for God knows how many years. By the way, what a nice coincidence. Lesbian couples, Alice and Gertrude, seems to be a popular combination. Anyway, here on the right is Jacqueline Woodson, and behind her is a golden Alice Stokes statue, which the Lesbian Avengers created and placed with Gertrude Stein so she wouldn't have to be alone. And then there was dancing. It was another one of those really, 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 really cold days. But it was wonderful. People were reading. Yvonne Rainer was there reading from her work. People did speeches, and Max talked. It was a really, really incredibly creative action from the Lesbian Avengers. And, the creativity in activism is so inspiring,
Shut
and it
up.
is
The
so
bitch gonna lie from a
important.
grain of rice. How the
One
fuck is
minute.
you choppy like that? I
I'm
don't
so
mind it.
sorry. We need to. You're good to go, Saskia.
I got a little startled. What is that?
Yeah.
Um, so the creativity of activism, not only is it really important for the people doing the action to have that energy, but it carries on and it makes it so much easier for people to understand what is going on. And it is just um, really important to have that. It is, I think one banner is not enough. Oh, but here we have a banner that
And
is
yes.
immediately
So,
contradicting me. Oh, well. The 21st annual New York City Dyke March, also started by the Avengers. I think there is some more knowledge at the moment about how it really got started. But anyway, um, 30 more than 30 years of Dyke marches in New York City. I photographed. I think I've been to all of them, and an incredibly inspiring event. Really, really, really amazing to see. I don't know, 3,000, 5,000 queer women, queers on the street celebrating dyke life.
it's one of the it's the warmest celebration. have ever had the joy of attending multiple times. And some years holding a banner for Alice and Gertrude too. And Alice actually was born on March 17th, so all of these St. Patrick's Day events, but it is massive.
It is massive. It's one of my
And
favorite things.
and I got to see you photographing there last year. And so looking forward to this year.
Me too.
So, oh, and I see Jackie Rudin, another wonderful photographer in this photograph now.
Oh,
I
I see
spot
her.
people. Anyway, I'm going to stop sharing and open it up to the community for questions. And so just know you can raise a hand to talk, or you could post a question in the chat and I'll be looking at that. I stop share now. And I'm going to unpin us, Saskia, so that we can see everyone. Do myself. Okay. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see. I could see some of your faces. Now I can see so many more. And I invite you to raise a hand to ask Saskia a question. I am looking into the chat right now. Lots of affirmative comments in the chat, Saskia. Wow Cafe was the very best.
Still around.
And thanks to you for all your documentation. Now, I see Diana Henry. Could you unmute, Diana, and so you can ask a question?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I really love the photographs and the insights that Saskia shared. having a lot of the same feelings about the work. And I thought I saw a picture of the Betty Lane in the back of one of those police vans. But in any case, I wondered, Saskia, do you know Betty, and is there anything you'd like to share about her?
I did meet Betty, but only once, and it was really, really close to the day that she passed away, unfortunately. However, I do feel like I know her because I have processed her collection of photographs at the archives, and we have many, many, many photographs. Betty was a prolific photographer. And for an archivist, oh my God, an archivist's dream. Everything, every photograph she gave us was marked with what it was and the year and the names of the people. So there's no questioning or not knowing, oh, let's get to that some other year when we get to know who is on the photos. It was amazing. She was a friend of the archives. She photographed not only the lesbian community, but she also photographed theater. She photographed New York. We don't have that much of that work. We really have the lesbian oriented work. And she was great. She was great. And I am very, very grateful that she felt at home in the archives and gave us the materials that she gave us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and also so much thanks to Diana for being with us tonight. Diana's done so much incredible work with the Alice Austen House in the early days, and is an incredible photographer too. Maxine, would you like to unmute? I see your hand next.
Besides thanking Saskia for all the stuff she does at the archives, I wanted to point out that people should check her Instagram account, her personal one,
Yeah.
because her personal photographs are just amazing. And I look forward to seeing them all the time. When she talked about just finding things that, you know, she picks up and shows you, it's true. And they're just incredibly well composed as well as interesting. And she also does videos. So I just wanted people to know about that because they're really great. I mean, I love that she does the lesbian community and the activism, and I love seeing her at actions. But that is also something that's a part of her.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maxine. Saskia, I have a question in the chat from Caro. And they are asking, what is the most challenging action you have photographed and why was it challenging?
Oh, there were some actions that were kind of, you know, where the police was very aggressive. Like I remember blocking the Midtown Tunnel. And that must have been an act up action where everybody would simply lie down. Simply, I don't mean simply, but where everybody would lie down at the entrance of the Midtown Tunnel. And, you know, I mean, you can walk on the street with a banner or you can do something cute in Bryant Park, but blocking people's access or movement, that is intense. If you interrupt their day, that has an effect. And that was really hard to photograph because I couldn't get there. I couldn't get close. So that was one. I'm not quite sure. They were all more inspiring and energy giving than difficult. I don't really remember difficult so much. But when I think of it, Carol, I'll find you and I'll let you know.
I always
Thank
think that there's a lot of conversation that can happen post these short talks for sure. And I encourage people to reach out. I'm always happy to share my email. It's justVictoria@aliceausten.org. I'd like to ask Alexis to unmute now. She has a question.
Yeah, hi, thanks. And great to see you, Saskia, and great to hear more about all that you do. You mentioned this moment, or probably not a moment. You mentioned thinking that you were documenting history to feeling like you were part of history. And I wish you could just speak a little bit, if you feel comfortable, about what changed for you? Like, what were some of the things that helped you accept for yourself the story that you were actually and continue to be part of history yourself and not just someone documenting or stewarding history?
I think that for me, the realization that I'm part of history, it gave me a kind of confidence in what I was doing. It gave me, I would almost say it gave me the right to explain to people what I was showing them. Because I had knowledge of certain events that kind of went beyond the things where I had been part of. I mean, that may sound a little grand, but that's what it gave me. It gave me the confidence to own my activity. And I don't think that I had that before. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm curious too, like, what, if you remember, what some of the things were? Was it conversations with people? Was it people?
It's conversations with people. It's conversations with people, and primarily not even so much with the people that come in to visit that are only there for an hour, even though I do occasionally talk quite a bit, and the people that I work with and my interns may attest to that. I talk their heads off, but it is in those conversations that I realize it. It is when I am working with people, when I'm actively processing material, when I explain who is what and what they did, and I see it all come together, and that is when I feel the ownership when I'm working with people.
And
Yeah.
I think so much of what you do is mentorship too, Saskia. From what I have seen, just invaluable experiences for these younger lesbians that are entering into this world as interns or whatever their work is or they're studying. It's absolutely incredible. I have a question from Claire. They ask, when was your, I think it was your first exposure to lesbian photography, and what was the photo or artist, if you remember? And also, thank you so much for your work and talking with us.
Well, that must have been my first girlfriend who never said, I'm going to bring my camera. She always said, I'm going to bring my Pentax K1000. She was very proud of the particular brand. It's, as a matter of fact, it's the only camera that you can use without a battery because it has a fixed shutter speed. So if you know enough about exposure, you can still take pictures even if you have no battery. So, yeah, my first girlfriend was a photographer, or it did photography. She was mostly an academic. And so I think it was in Amsterdam when I was part of the group of women that hung out in the Vrouwenhuis, the women's house, the big house on one of the canals in Amsterdam that got squatted and was the breeding ground for lots of lesbian activism, from having parties and having a band and music and having fun to starting the lesbian cinema group and the lesbian publishing group. I didn't do that, but I was part of that environment. I was in that environment as a young dyke. And there were people there doing photography, Gon Buurman, to name one. So I don't remember the photos per se, but I remember the people, and I remember how having a camera in their hand was like, an extension for them of their body.
I think for many photographers, they talk about it in that way that you just described, that it's this kind of extension, and it's also a way in which, because I think often the question is, it's incredibly brave that you went there with your camera and photographed all of these people, or, I think Alice was incredibly bold to venture out onto the streets of Manhattan and, win the trust of someone that she asked to pose for her that she certainly may not have known before, but there's something that breaks down some of those barriers having that camera, which I think is really, really interesting. I have to let you know, Saskia, that there's a lot of love for your Greenwood Cemetery photographs happening in the chat.
My happy place.
A very queer cemetery indeed. And, there's just so many people that are thanking you. And I guess I have one last question to round out this evening. And that was to ask you how it felt revisiting the Alice Austen House this year with your photographs on display and bringing various friends back over the course of the summer months. with your photographs of the action at our site.
It felt great. I was so surprised that that whole thing came together, and I have to be grateful to Pasini for making the connection between us, because she had seen the Alice Austen photos in my house just the week before you asked if there was any Staten Island material that you could pull from. So I am grateful for that, and I am grateful for you saying, "Oh, we own our history," when I said, "I'm surprised that you would even want to show that stuff." And so thank you for that. It's, it's really nice to see your work up in public. And yeah, it was great.
Well, we so enjoyed it, and we're so excited. It's been years that I've been wanting to work with not just the Her Story archives, because I had such a fantastic experience visiting there, and I've used it for various research for sure. But with the Lesbian Avengers, and there's so many more than what we're covering in this brief first 4 sessions. So watch this space. And I did see in the chat that someone asked if they could view Maxine's talk from last week, and the answer is absolutely yes. All of our virtual talks are available on the Alice Austen YouTube channel. You can find links via our website, but you could just type in Maxine Wolf, Alice Austen House on Google, and you'll be able to find it as well. I encourage you to join our mailing list, because we regularly offer wonderful virtual sessions that are great to sometimes revisit, especially if you're thinking about studying some of this work. And Anne Maguire says Saskia is just brilliant. And also mentions Coney Island too. So I'm very excited that next week and I will get to chat, and I'll get to know Anne a little better, and so will all of you, or many of you know Anne very, very well. So yeah, please join us next week again. It's all the Mondays in December until we get to Christmas. So it's a real treat. Thank you so much, Saskia. Thank you so much, Zoe, our education director, for helping me steward tonight. A big whoop, totally unmute and give Saskia a proper round of applause, and a whoop if you feel like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I'm happy to see you all.
Thanks, Saskia.
Thank you, Saskia.
Thank you. Everyone have a very safe and wonderful good night. And be sure to email me if you need any other information.